everyone. Thank you for joining us today here at Flatfile's webinar. Today, we're going to be talking how to fast-track data file imports across your marketplace suppliers. So if you joined this webinar, you probably have experienced some challenges with data file imports, getting products into your system in different conduits. And so we're going to be talking today how to solve it with a tool like Flatfile. Okay, before we get too far in, I'm going to do some introductions here. My name's Austin. I'm a marketplace's vertical lead. So I work with a lot of folks in this space, talking about their challenges and seeing how Flatfile could be a potential solution for them. And today I'm joined by Roby. Roby is our solutions engineer here, and he's kind of on the technical side of the house. He'll be able to walk through all the things that we're going to be talking about today in a more technical light. He's also going to be showing us the demo too. Okay, so let's get started. Before we jump too much into the problem, let's talk a little bit about Flatfile. If you're in this webinar, you might have heard of us before, but if not, we are a startup started in 2018 solving data file import challenges for users across the world. Our original set inception with our founders who were doing this, solving this problem for multiple different companies in different spaces and different SaaS applications. Folks that were trying to get data files into their ecosystem, our founders were tasked with solving in the business. They saw that this is a pervasive problem, not just for the businesses they worked at, or even for the customers that they were talking to. And they wanted to start a business to revolutionize that whole concept of data file imports. Fast forward to today, we have over 70 employees, over $100 million in funding, and nearing 1,000 customers with over 500 customers. We're funded by some of the largest investors in the space, including Workday Ventures, Gradient, Two Sigma, Scale, all folks that understand the importance of data file import challenges and what types of potential is offered by solving for this in the industry. Okay, so let's talk about the problem. Exchanging data files, it's costly, it's messy. You often have to create bespoke pipelines or services team to solve for this, to get your products from your market into your marketplaces, whether that's suppliers, whether that's customers, or a mishmash of the two. Often this is one of the most convoluted processes in getting data into your application because it's so variant. And so how has that been solved for traditionally? Well, there's lots of different solutions, but what Flatfile has done in our solution, our marketplace solution, has what we've seen about 50% cost savings and time savings over our customers' span of being a Flatfile customer. So that could be the manifestation of engineering time, that could be the manifestation of time to value, bringing their customers into the ecosystem faster, getting more suppliers into their marketplace. All these have substantial time-saving metrics that Flatfile has helped solve. And you can even see from some of our customer quotes on the right here, how they themselves have implemented Flatfile to see those types of savings. We're working with some of the largest marketplaces in the world, like Pernod Ricard, Square, White Pages, Toast. All these brands are to recognize and have entrusted us to solve their data import challenges that they have today. So let's talk about what we're going to be going through. First, let's talk about just like what data file uploads are. Is it something like a CSV file just getting into your system, or a little bit more than that? And we're going to talk about what the challenges of modern solutions have been for that type of application. And we're going to get into outcomes and measurements of how you're going to have this type of solution solved for with a tool like Flatfile or any other type of tool. And we're going to jump into the Flatfile methodology, how we've organized our tool, how we've solved for this problem mostly today. And then finally round it out, the platform demo hosted by Roby here and a Q&A. So what are data file uploads? Everyone's got a different definition of what these are today. We kind of define them largely as variant flat files on your computer. So Excel, CSV, XML, zip, PDFs, JSON objects, anything that's a local file that people are working with and they want to ingest into your application. There's been a few different ways that this has been solved for holistically so far, but none of them have really gotten you all the way there. There's ETL and iPaaS solutions you might be familiar with. That's getting a fixed schema to a fixed schema. Okay, we know we're coming from this PLM system into our marketplace, and we know that this is their data model. This is what we can transpose it to and maybe do some transformations. That's great for a one-to-one relationship. You also have data management tools, things that the data already exists in its application, and now you want to do some editing of it. You want to edit, transform, validate that data once it's in the application. Again, that's great for a specific use case of data management, but it doesn't really solve the challenge of variant source data, and that's where Flatfile comes into play. We're taking any Flatfile structure, any nested object, whatever that looks like in your specific application or your customer's application or your supplier's application, transposing that into the right schema that you need it. So if you recognize products in your marketplace in a specific schema, we're going to have a standardized data model, but also allows every other definition of products to be imported with Flatfile. We're going to also do validations and transformations on that data within our ecosystem. So you can really enable any type of data input value into your system while also having that data integrity and data rigidity that you would need to get the real value out of your application. And that's where Flatfile has kind of pioneered the space of the data file exchange. But before Flatfile existed, there were some other solutions, and some of these solutions might look familiar to you and how you're solving this problem today. That could be services, your internal team, or maybe a third-party team is working to validate and bring this data into your system. It could be templates. You're providing your suppliers or customers templates. Hey, this is how we recognize products, and now you have to adhere to our template to move towards that model, kind of pushing the friction on them. And you also have custom builds. You can have your own engineering team building up your own bespoke pipeline of, we know this is how products are, and we want to do this specific transformation. All of these sometimes have their benefits for whatever types of, challenges you have in the business. But as you can see below, a lot of those come at expense at multiple other categories, whether that's upfront cost, the ongoing cost of maintaining that solution, like a custom build, the user experience, how well is the user embedded in this experience? Is it really key to your application to really drive that core user experience data file uploads? Data quality, how sure are you that that data that's coming through this process is really getting into the right space that you need it to be in? And then the opportunity cost, of course. So that opportunity cost manifests itself in multiple different ways, whether it's delays in getting suppliers on board or not even suppliers into your ecosystem at all, products into your system. Well, these all have inherent risks and challenges with the solutions so far that have been presented. And this is why Flatfile is kind of solving holistically for all these problems. So how can we do this better? Those three challenges that people have been solving for, how can we do this better with Flatfile? Well, there's a few things you need to keep in mind when you're building a solution like this. The first of all is we just showed all the different source structures that are imported into that data file platform, a CSV, a JSON, and all of those maybe have an Excel file, all those different definitions. So different templates, you could have 10 fields, 100 fields, whatever that looks like. People could define a unit of measurement differently if they're in different countries or even in the same country. How do you enable someone to be involved in that process? Ultimately, because of the variance, you're probably going to need some level of human engagement or human involvement in that process. But on the other side, you're probably going to want some AI modern SaaS application integration as well. So things like auto transformations of fields or date standardizations or whatever that looks like, you're going to want some level of automation in this process. So you're not passing all that friction to your customer. And then, of course, you're going to want some other things like inline resolution, the ability, just like in Excel, but in an online application to edit fields, maybe do collaboration. If your suppliers want to work with your customers who want to work with other marketplace users in getting this data into your ecosystem, you maybe want to have a collaborative workflow. That's going to be enabled. And that's something you might want to have enabled. And then, of course, flexibility and variability. The number of suppliers that exist in the world are only going to increase. The number of data standards and templates that exist out in the world and the header definitions is going to continue to compound and multiply. So if you're developing a point-in-time solution, it's very often to maintain that, you're going to have to expand it over time. So you want to make sure whatever solution you're providing is holding up the test of time and allowing for that rigidity to kind of be solved for. And so these are some of the business impacts that we've seen by implementing a tool like Flatfile for our customers. Before, we've seen like the templates and the friction of bringing customers on. Okay, here's your template. Now adhere to our template and the time that takes. You had, as a result of that or other circumstances with human in the loop, you have delayed product onboarding. So something challenges in this process, whether it's the services team or whether it's the customer themselves in self-serving, there's often a delay in that. There's a very tangible cost many of the times for these businesses, especially if they're doing a services-based approach, for how much energy and time it takes to get those data templates into the right format or validations. And then, of course, just the barrier to new acquisition of customers and suppliers. If this is a very rigid and complex process that adds a lot of friction, more likely than not, you're going to have some off-putting experiences with your first time onboarding customers or suppliers. After utilizing a tool like Flatfile, we've seen a lot of positive outcomes. things like customers being happy that they can just get their data in 20 minutes or so into your application without having to go through this convoluted back and forth process. You have accelerated go lives, you have reduced services costs, you have non-restrictive data acquisition. People can bring their data in whatever format they want. They don't have to transpose their data anymore to get it right data format for however you recognize it. It can be in any type of format that they want to bring it in. So it's not really that restrictive engagement model anymore. And ultimately, what this all drives to at Flatfiles is what our goal is, what our mission is, and that's just to make exchanging data files easier. We want to reduce that time. We want to reduce that cost for you. We want to make it so it's not a headache at all. A lot of folks that we talk with say, okay, well, 80% of our data acquisition might be standardized through APIs, but 20% might be coming in through like data files and Excel and CSV files. Ultimately, our time spent of our operations team, our post-sales team, our integration team, whatever that looks like, it's like 80% spent on those 20%, the classic 80-20 rule, 20-80. And that's what our goal is we want to really reduce that time and that friction that your internal organization faces with this challenge today. And so that's why we designed Flatfile and how we designed Flatfile. We have a couple different approaches. The first approach is user design. Ultimately, whoever is using this file, whether it's still a human in the loop or the customer themselves, the end customer that's doing this, you want it to be intuitive. And so we've developed here at Flatfile an interface that goes above and beyond a very common interface everyone's familiar with, Excel, right? The types of familiarity of cells and cell management and find and replace and all the types of functions that people that work with data day in, day out are familiar with. We're going to have an environment, as you can see here, that is emulating that. And Roby's going to show you a little bit more what that looks like in a second. But those things include stuff like automatic error identification and using any file format, downloading a local file if you want to do it offline. You have one-click actions for doing entire transformations across a data set, or even calling a third-party API if you want to do some type of transformation with that as well. All of this is meant to be a very intuitive interface. And on top of that, we've embedded AI and ML into this as well. So things that Excel doesn't have, not just online functionality, you're going to be able to implement things like writing a natural prompt and saying, I want to update our SKU unit of measurement to say, add 5 for every specific price that's over 10, something along those lines, like a conditional transformation. You might take a while to embed within your application. That's all going to be first-class functionality that you can do right in a prompt right here. In addition, the other side of this is the technical integration. How does Flatfile work and feel? Well, we are an API-driven, SDK-based platform approach. So what that all means is it's very flexible. It's very dynamic. However you need to have your problem solved, we have an extensible platform that can solve any complex workflow or use case that you might be having with your specific marketplaces. If that's a async workflow or a synchronous workflow or human in the loop or sending a Slack message to someone whenever an error gets hit, whatever that looks like, we have an API-driven platform an event-driven platform that's going to enable a workflow that developers can use. And that flexibility we're talking about, that adaptability over time, something that's going to kind of match with that type of flexibility. So here at Flatfile, when we work with marketplace customers, we work with a very broad span of use cases. I'll kind of talk about some of those, what those look like today. The first one you might be familiar with, this might be what drawn you to the webinar in the first place, is inventory uploads. That could be as simple as taking products that you want to import into a marketplace or a PLM application or an e-commerce site, whatever that looks like. You have a list of products, you want to get it into your products data model, pretty simple model. That's something that we're traditionally seeing solved with Flatfile. If you want to embed that environment into your own application, so you can make it self-serve, completely removing like your own internal resources in that process, that's something we're doing too. Multi-sheet data models. What that means is like having referential integrity or relational data between multiple different data models. Let's say you're a PLM application and you are trying to get multiple different data models into your specific application. That could be things like products, that could be pricing, procurement, fulfillment, all those different types of data models, and they all have relationships to each other. Pricing reference products, product referencing shipping. And you want to maintain that integrity within the import experience. That's something Flatfile is solving for. If you have synchronous workflows, let's say your suppliers are sending you an updated product list. once a day, once a week, whatever that import workflow looks like via SFTP on some, type of mapping workflow. You can set up an endpoint within Flatfile, have that file arrive, map that automatically if they've done it before, saying, okay, your PID equals our product ID, so on and so forth, and have the output, all the valid files egress automatically to your application. That's another really cool use case that we're solving for people in the marketplaces segment. And then finally, a challenge that many of you have today, that the industry often has conferences and webinars in itself to solve, is borderless e-commerce. And that concept is, how do we do business across the world, but all speak the same language when it comes to products and product inventory and pricing and all these things that vary regionally? Well, with Flatfile, we can embed metadata into transformations. We can do localized experiences and language-based metadata that loads language based on the region. So you can really enable any type of supplier or customer or ecosystem to interact with your business by having very limited barriers to entry for bringing their data in. And these are all different functions that are possible to be solved within Flatfile. And we're going to kind of jump in today with Roby and talk about what those specific use cases are and one of those specific. Before I hand it off to Roby, just one final note here is you can see again why we're so large in the industry, why we're funded so by the biggest players in the space and the investment companies in the world. It's because we're working with the biggest customers in the world. We're working with the largest enterprises that have these problems and effectively have solved them for them. Okay, Roby, I will now hand it off to you and show what folks we're doing here.
Thank you so much, Austin. So, hi, folks. I'm Roby Hyde. I'm a solutions engineer at Flatfile, and I've been with the company for 3 years. I'm excited to show our product off today so that you can see some of the amazing features of our platform, and I'd love to go ahead and start the demo. So I'm going to share my screen, and this is what we call PLM Show, and this is a demo app in essence that we built. Flatfile, as Austin mentioned, is a developer toolbox. So it's hard to demo developer tools. So instead, what we've done is we've built this demo application, and we've built this example online marketplace app, and we've integrated Flatfile into it in several different ways. These integrations are examples of how Flatfile, of course, could be integrated into your marketplace product. Now, in this application, we have several different use cases that we've highlighted down here. Austin certainly covered several of those use cases, and these examples are built into the app. Each one of these uses Flatfile in a unique way to solve some common business or data onboarding problems. To give you some more context around this fictitious company that we've kind of based this demo on, let's assume that for today at least, PLM stands for Pulse Living Marketplace. They're a well-known online home appliance retailer. So our Pulse Living Marketplace app here is going to receive some data from a supplier. So the way we're going to do that, first off, I want to show you over here on the left-hand side how we've already got some data that is existing in our system. We obviously have a list of suppliers that we receive products from. We also have product categories that are, all of our products fit into one of these categories. And we want to be able to offer these categories up in our online marketplace for customers to be able to see where the products are. And then we also have a lot of attributes. And these are attributes that, as you look at these, can be applied to multiple products. So what you're seeing here, of course, is somewhat of a relational database with all of these IDs or key fields. We're able to link things together. For example, a 4-year warranty is an attribute that I can assign to multiple products by using this attribute ID. Okay, so what Pulse Living does not have right now is a list of products, and that's because our supplier has just sent over this list, and our supplier today is Cozy Home Appliances. They're a large multinational furniture supplier or home appliance supplier So we're going to get a list of products for them that we want to import. Now, also for today's demo, I wanted to showcase how we are able to embed Flatfile into existing applications. So as we go into this demo, I'm going to show you this embedded portal use case. And what we've got here is the ability for us to bring Flatfile up into an iframe that would live inside of your application. So this might be the button, for example, that lives inside your application, and your users would click this button to invoke Flatfile, but you want to keep them inside of the context of your application. So we do it as an iframe. So when I click on this now, we see that the iframe loads up, and we receive the Flatfile importer interface in this iframe. And the first thing that happens is we land on this welcome page. So we see we have a left-hand navigation over here, and this welcome page is just a document that we've put together to help the user figure out what they're supposed to do in this application. So this can be anything you want. It's just a markdown page. So you can put instructions, you could put graphics, you could put helpful resource links, and anything you want to define in here. This would normally be a blank page until you put some context in here around how the user is supposed to use this. You can have multiple documents. If you require different documents for different things, you could have a suite of them and then dynamically select which ones you want to show when the user opens the portal. So documents are a great way to provide some instructions or other information to the user. We also see that we've got a files section, and this is where we can upload the data that we want to import into our tables. Now we also see the tables down here. We already looked at these, but these are the tables, and you can see here that we can have multiple tables per an importer. So it might be a situation where we need users to load data into more than one table. And if that was a necessary feature, then certainly we could have these tables accept their own imports as we go through this file upload section. For today, we just need to upload tables into this product, or upload data into this products table. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop a file of product information in here. And we see this file has come in and we've extracted data. So let's take a look at what this file looks like. This is an example of what a supplier file might be for our products. We obviously get a product name and a description, some sort of ID, but we also start to see some of the issues that people have with data imports, in that there might be missing fields or a miscommunication in how you're supposed to label a certain category, or several other issues, right? There could be several things wrong in here. And either I'm going to have my services team go through this and find all the errors and fix it, or we use a tool like Flatfile to automate that process. So let's go ahead and import this into Flatfile. And I'm going to import it into the products table. And once I've determined where I want to put this data, it's asking me to align the fields. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't matter what sequence the fields came in from the user, right? We're mapping based on the field label itself. So we see all these incoming fields over here, and we try to automatically align them to the fields that we have in our schema. So we'll use ML here, as well as some historical data, to take a look at how we can best automate this for the user. And generally, we want the user just to be able to look at this and say, oh, wow, yeah, everything's lined up. That's pretty cool. Let's go. Now, of course, if they want to override, they can click into it and change that field to something else. But hopefully everything's aligned and they can just continue on. Now, what happens if you've got a field that has different enum values or category values that need to be mapped? So this is a place where we can do that. Any enum fields get the opportunity to have their values matched. So anything that's coming in different type of input fields here, we can map to specific things. And if something comes in that we don't understand, we don't necessarily need to map it to anything particular. I can just leave that as is, right? So let's continue on. So now we're actually going to map the data into our schema. And as we fit this data into our schema, we start to see some issues. And this is because we have what we call record hooks that are running in the background. And record hooks are just code that you can insert into the importer that checks logical situations of these fields. And it can normalize, it can transform, it can fix, it can heal the data. You can do all sorts of things with it to help the user get their data in a better shape. Now, in this case, we see some pretty common things like the fact that they left an ID out. As I scroll over these, it gives me more information about what the problem is. And in this case, the text is too long, so it's just too big of a field. In here, we've got an invalid entry for this reference table. So it's kind of like, well, how do I fix this now as a user? Well, you've got a couple of things that you can do to kind of help this user out. First off, we have the ability to kind of see where our records are here. And I've got 5 bad records. And if I want to filter down by a specific field, I can do that, right? So I've got 2 category field issues. Let's look at those 2 records specifically, right? And so in this case, it's pretty obvious that it just put the wrong category in here. I see that you have a televisions category, so we're going to do that. And for washer dryer, that must be a washing machine category down here. So we'll select that. Okay. And now those 2 invalid fields are gone. They are simply over here in the valid section now. So if I turn off my filter by error, we can see now that I've only got 4 invalid records. So using this process, it's very easy for the user to go through the data and clean it up and fix this in some way. For this one that's got too many characters, we can also dive into this and go into an editing thing here and just see that there's just clearly too much information in this product name. So we'll delete that, and that fixes, again, the error. Okay, same thing with the missing product ID. Like, oh yeah, how did we forget that? It's supposed to be 102, and now that's fixed. So again, we can heal this data. Sometimes you can heal it automatically with code. Sometimes you have to rely on the user to kind of help you out. But the first thing to do is to give the user the ability and the notification of what's wrong so that they can edit these things. Okay. Now, a couple of other things that have happened when we brought this data in. We did receive from the input file the price and the quantity. Well, we went ahead and did some math as we imported this. We calculated the total value based on those 2 fields. And then we also did a conversion of that value over to US dollar. Some of these things are already in US dollar, but there's other values that came in for the currency. And because Cozy Home is a multinational, they might have products in whatever currency that particular product is in. And you can see as I change these currencies, it will update our total amount over here. So it's doing this by making an API call out to a third-party currency rate conversion system. We get those in real time, and we're doing this math dynamically in real time to update these dollar amounts. So this is always going to be an accurate representation of how much that product is worth in US dollars. And of course, in this case, we had something come in that doesn't look like a currency symbol. I can fix that by picking something else, maybe a euro or something else, maybe the Hong Kong dollar. And again, as we apply that, it will do the lookup of that currency conversion. Scrolling a little bit farther over to the right, we can see that we've got some issues with the various attributes that have been assigned to this. So some of these look like they were just fat-fingered. I've got a value in there that's got an extra character in the front. I can obviously go in and fix that. And you're wondering perhaps maybe where this list of values is coming from. Well, it's coming from our other tables here, right? These are lookup tables. And so it's looking up all of these attributes over here to provide me a list of available entries that I can put in here. And so we can use this as kind of an Excel VLOOKUP type of relationship. And it looks like we've got probably something wrong here. I'm just going to change that to 5011 and enter that, and that's acceptable. Excellent. So now we're at a state where I've got 0 invalid records. That's fantastic. I love that. I've cleaned up my data set, quick and easy. Flatfile is basically saying at this point, there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with this data that our code can see. So you can go ahead and move forward with it. But I also have some desire to maybe do some updating here with some AI tools because I want to make this product better, right? Um, so I've got a situation where if there's a attribute over here, our marketing department at Pulse Living is really big on pushing the free 4-year warranties that we have on some of our products. So they're asking for me to change the description to include a little call out about our free 4-year warranty if the product has that. Well, if I were to do this manually, I'd have to cross-reference which ones have the 4-year warranty and go in here and edit this. We've got AI, right? Let's use AI to help us out here. So once we go into this AI transform section, it gives us a view of our data, and it then lets us do a normal English language AI request, right? So I could say something like, if any attribute field contains 5003, which happens to be the attribute for a 4-year warranty, add free 4-year 4-year warranty to the beginning of the description field. So again, because it's AI, we can use English language, right? It'll do the LLM and go ahead and give us a response to that. So if we think about what the AI is going to do at this point, it's going to go out there and say, well, let me see if I can understand what this request is first. And it's going to start looking at the data and then offering a solution that it thinks it came up with. And so we see that any place where it found that condition, it's now inserting this free 4-year warranty in the middle or in the beginning of this. And if we scroll over to the right, we should see that there are, in fact, some records out here with the 5003, which is where it's picking up that information from. Not all records, of course, were impacted. I can limit it to only the records that have been impacted by this. And this should allow me to confirm if I scroll over here that sure enough, all of these should have a 5003 in there. So that gives me some confidence that yes, it's doing the right thing. And once I'm happy that it has understood my request and it has apparently done the right thing, then I can go ahead and say, let's transform the data. And it'll go ahead and apply that transformation to the data and actually update all of our data. So now we see I've got actual fields here that have that new tag in front of the description. That's just a quick example of how we can use AI. Once you start thinking about using AI in a spreadsheet environment, there's just so many things that you can do, and it really opens the door for a lot of customization of the data with the very powerful, helpful tool of AI. Okay, so now that I've modified my data, excuse me, and I've cleaned it all up, I want to go ahead and push this data out to our larger application, right? This is still just an iframe inside of PLM Show. So let's go ahead and push this data into PLM Show. So I've kind of finished now my data importing, and I want to see it show up in the rest of the product. So I close my iframe. And now over here, in addition to the suppliers, I've also got the data coming in from the products. Looks like the API hasn't quite loaded yet, but eventually we'd see that data all come in as additional data structures into our products database. So that's a quick demo of Flatfile Importer doing its thing here with an example upload from PLM Show. I know you might have some questions here, and I can't wait to get to them, but I do want to hand it back to Austin before I do, so that he can wrap this up before we get into our Q&A.
Exciting stuff that you can do within Flatfile. I think one of the things that we showed you is how to embed that locally within your own application. In our example, PLM.show could be your own application. We did a multi-sheet upload. While we only uploaded one, it was referencing multiple different sheets. They had different foreign key relationships with all those different data models. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with Flatfile, and we'd love to talk about your specific use case. We know with all the customers that we work with, all their use cases are bespoke and different to them, and all have unique challenges. There's definitely not a one size fits all type of solution for this. So we would love to hear from you and the challenges that you're facing today, and think about creatively solving for that with Flatfile. As Roby said, I want to open it up to Q&A. If anyone has any questions that they want to put into the chat right now, I'm happy to kind of go through and answer some of those, or comments, or if you also want to just hear from us, we're going to be sending some links in the resources tab here in the Zoom field, with getting started with the platform, links to the website, lots of different resources, as well as setting up follow-up email after this with some of the content as well, including a recording of this session that we've had here today. But while we get those populated in the Zoom chat, I want to use this time to answer any questions that anyone has. And I'll wait a few seconds here to let those sit in. Okay, we've got one here. And it's how do I get started with Flatfile? It's a great question from Eric. So we have a couple different ways you can get started with Flatfile. We are a platform, as we talked about today, that's a developer first type of tooling. So you would want some type of engagement from an engineer. However, we do work with lots of folks that are non-technical in evaluation cycle Flatfile. So if you want to work with our team to kind of mock out your solution specifically, and what that could look like for implementation, or even mock up a POC with you, we're happy to do that. However, we do have a getting started link that you can fork our SDK and get started yourself free of charge. We have a free to use platform, entry level into our platform that you can go ahead and play around with the tool. And then we can kind of talk about how to solve that specific use case and where you follow our commercial model. A follow-up question I saw while I was answering that was, do I need a developer to get started? So that's tied into that same type of question. Yes, this is a developer first platform. However, we're happy to kind of work with you guys as you get started. Okay, I have another one, which is, where is Flatfile data hosted? Roby, do you want to take that?
Absolutely. So Flatfile has built out an infrastructure. It's all cloud-based. We are hosted in AWS, and that's where our infrastructure lives. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, fantastic. And just adding on to that as well, we do have some regional deployments. So if you're working internationally and you need to have specific data compliance standards, we can host in different regions. And we also have dedicated server offerings as well. If you don't want to have to go through sub-processing agreements and info security requirements internally, we all have the different types of deployment and configuration options available to whatever your info security needs are, on top of a very robust security policy, which is on our website. Okay, so then let's see here. We have John. He says, can you import XML files? Roby, you want to take that one as well?
Yeah. Flatfile does offer the support of many different file types. XML, just being a text file, is certainly capable of being imported. The challenge with XML, of course, is it can be a nested structure. So what we've done is we've built a plugin that you can add into Flatfile. Flatfile supports a plugin architecture, so we can extend the functionality with many different features, and XML imports is one of them. So by putting this plugin in, you can not only import XML files, but you've got some options that you can set to control the nesting levels and things like that. So yes, XML files are supported.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Roby. We have another question here, which is, how large can the incoming data files be? So I think this is related to records or size. I can say I've worked with a lot of folks in kind of the pre-sales capacity evaluating Flatfile. We've tested large files. We also have customers that have very large sample data files. And in general, our advertisements, our upper bound limit of performance degradation, where you're going to start to see like a sizable impact on the user, might be about 1 gigabyte. So those are very large files. That's millions of records and lots of columns. But we also, in our enterprise plan, we can talk about later as well, is we do have the ability to have additional throughput speeds and work with you on your processing time. So If you have any questions around that, I think that generally is most folks are below that threshold, but if you additional questions, we can handle it offline as well. Okay, I think maybe one or two more. Let's see here. Okay, it sounds like AI is a hot topic right now. So maybe Roby, you can walk us through around how Flatfile is embedding AI into its platform right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Flatfile, obviously, in the age of things like ChatGPT, wanted to look at how we could integrate AI into the spreadsheet model. We've come up with our own LLM based AI chatbot that we've built into our own infrastructure. So, from a security perspective, that's great because the data never goes off to a third party like OpenAI or anybody else. And we're able to get the performance that we're looking for by keeping it into our infrastructure as well as the security. But it does understand things like field names, and you can ask it to do a variety of things, as you saw, with those field names. And you can also use it to kind of restructure your data to some capacity. It won't do things like add records or delete records, but that functionality is something that over time, as we continue to look at the features and the power of AI, we'll be adding into our AI solution.
Awesome. Yeah, as Roby mentioned, AI technology in general is evolving, and we're adapting with the technology as it becomes present as well. We already have some really cool solutions, and our roadmap has some really exciting stuff of how we're implementing this as first-class functionality into our product as well. And then, Roby, we have another question here centered around workflows. So someone's asking about SFTP workflows. How does Flatfile connect to SFTP? Can you walk through
Yeah,
what that
I,
type of workflow would look like?
yeah, absolutely. So generally, if you imagine a workflow where a supplier or somebody is dropping a file into an FTP server on a regular basis, you want to be able to know when that file is there, and you want to be able to automatically pull it into Flatfile. So let's say we've got an API running on a cron job that's just checking the status of that FTP server, looking for a file to show up. And then once it's there, you can have an API call, go out and grab that data and bring it into the file import section of Flatfile. So that can be automated. And then once that file hits Flatfile, it can also be automated through the mapping stage. So if you know what this file structure looks like, it's the same file, you get it every week or whatever. You can automate that mapping so that the data comes all the way through into the review stage of Flatfile, and you can even automate submission at that point. So you think of an ETL type of a workflow where everything is fully automated. While that is possible in Flatfile, the advantage we have is that if there's any variability whatsoever in that data structure, you can also have it recognize that something did not happen according to plan, and can then bring in a human to help resolve that issue. So it does give you the ability to do the automation, bring data in from FTP, but also have that ability to manage the variability of the data.
Fantastic. I think I'm not seeing any other more questions. We've talked about a lot of different use cases. Roby just talked about one with SFTP. We see a lot of different folks with very bespoke, unique use cases. So if you do have a fun, exciting use case that challenges your business as it relates to data files, the likelihood of that we've seen it before is pretty high, although we're seeing some new stuff in the data file import landscape all the time. If you want to connect with us, if you want to chat with us, we'd love to connect on your specific use case.